Hey everyone, how are you? Joe here, and in today's video I'm going to be explaining some of the stuff that I did in the foyer with you. Now, it's for those of you that don't like to hear me talking or hear a video about a lot of talking, this one might not be for you, but hopefully you'll watch anyway. So as we lead up to the home tour, which will be coming up soon, I thought it'd be nice if I could actually go over how I did and completed each room, because on the home tour it's basically music and I really won't be talking about anything. So I thought, hey, maybe people would like to hear my thought process on the entire room. I know I did sections of each room, but a lot of the rooms I didn't show you the whole thing. I was waiting to do that, and I guess now's the time, because it's getting closer and closer as each day passes by. I can't believe that it's so close, and of course, I look at stuff and I want to change it, but it's no use in doing that now because we're too close to Christmas. So anyway, today what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be going over the foyer with you. Now, for those of you that have been following along, you know that this whole season, this whole series has been about basically what I was calling kind of like my favorite things, and repeating some of this stuff with a twist, tradition with a twist, things that I've done with a twist. So in the foyer, in the past, I've done a lot of different things, but I did do Santa's office in there, which I really loved when I did that. And I did Santa's Sweet Shop last year, which I really loved when I did that as well. And I was going to try to incorporate both of those thoughts into this year's foyer. Now, I made so much of the candy pieces and everything last year that I was not going to let them go to waste. I really wanted to use them again, and I did use most of them, not all of them again. I had also made that, if you remember, last year I made that little fireplace that the elf was cooking the chocolate in. I didn't use that piece again, and unfortunately it got damaged. I had it stored somewhere and it got damaged over the summer and I had to throw it away. So it was in the plan to use, but it didn't work out. But whatever, we move on. So, in that foyer, I had this idea this year to do the list, the little boys and girls, the good little boys and girls list. So, I did a lot of research over the summer. I even spoke to an art teacher, and I asked him how I could go about making these lists, and that they would be stiff enough to work. My intention was that I had wanted the list throughout the garland on the stairs. I'm glad I didn't do that, but I did do it in places. And he suggested that maybe I use some kind of gauze fabric and then starch it and form it into what I wanted, which was a really good idea, which is basically what I wanted to do. I had wanted it to kind of look like that old kind of not old, but like paper that would give reminiscence of being old. Didn't work out. I didn't have time to do that. So Marianne had bought me this giant roll of it's kind of like poster board paper, and what I did was I cut it into thicknesses. It's about 6 inches wide, and then varying lengths. And then what I did was I looked up kids' names on the internet, and I just started alphabetically putting names on there. I penciled it in first, and then I went over it with a marker, and then I Mod Podged it, and I put glitter on it. And then the way that I get it to, like it kind of like does that kind of thing, I used floral wire, to pin it where I wanted, or I rolled the top and the bottom as well. I hot glued that. And then I used floral wire, like pinched in, like a little piece, kind of like a U shaped. I pinched in, and then I brought it in, and I tied it to where I wanted it to be. So it gives that illusion of being, really long and wavy and all that kind of stuff. So I got this idea that I wanted, the head elf to be on the newel post with the with the list, with one of the lists anyway, and below him I wanted Santa's bag. So I went looking around, and like, this sounds terrible, but I hate to buy stuff that I don't think I'm going to use again. And Marianne was searching around on the internet looking for bags, for us to use. And I told her, you know what, I have a better idea, because I knew I had these red sheets and they're like cotton, that we don't use any longer. And I thought, I could just like wrap this sheet up like this and then pinch it on the top and make my own bag, which worked out well, because I didn't know the size I needed and whatnot, how much room I had, because remember, it's the foyer, so people are coming in, so I can't, I can't take every inch of it. Although I would love to do that, I can't do it, because that's where people enter. So I have to be careful, especially stuff that's on the floor. We don't want anybody stepping on stuff and, like being in their way. We want them to enjoy it, not, do that kind of thing, which makes me feel funny when I see people doing. I know some people do it, they're afraid that they're going to, touch something, which is great. I don't want them to touch anything, but I don't want them to feel like that either. So anyway, let's take a look at what I did in the foyer together, and this way you'll know, when you see the home tour, you'll know the intent behind it. Okay, so as people enter into the foyer, this is what their view is. They're going to obviously, take notice of the 12-foot tree first. That's the first thing they see, and then they'll take notice of other things that are in the room. It's just the way it is. Obviously, the 12-foot tree is the center of attention here, and it's filled with ornaments, our traditional ornaments and so on. I try to incorporate a little bit of the theme into it. This year, what I did was I used reindeer heads that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I painted them out. I have Rudolph on the top, and then I have the other 8 reindeer distributed throughout the tree. Now, I have reindeer going on the opposite side of the foyer, so to pull that idea over here, that's what I did. I put those reindeer heads in. I don't want them to obstruct the any of our ornaments that are on the tree, so they're embedded within the tree, and they're just kind of like peeking out, so it kind of gives that feel. For a little kid, I would be thinking, oh, look, there they are, they're hiding in the tree because we came into this room. I always try to think through the mind of a child when I'm decorating this room, especially, or anything whimsical for Christmas. I try to go back in my thoughts of how I felt when, I was a kid, and I would see some of this, Christmas stuff when my parents would, take us to, different stores and whatnot. So again, here is the tree, the main star of the foyer. So again, I'm just taking a little bit of a look at some of the, traditional ornaments we have on this tree, and I'm zeroing in on those candy canes, because that is a recurring theme in here. On the opposite side of the foyer, right, or on each side of the door, we have these 2 closets, and they're about 10 feet up in the air. I have these 2 trees, and I did a lot of toys and whatnot. And up here, as you can see, I used real deer antlers. And I also used the lists that I spoke about, the little boy and girls list. I embedded them in those trees, as well as tiny little reindeer. So I have this idea of, we're in Santa Land, or Santa's toy shop, and there's toys all over and lists all over, and we're getting ready to pack the bag and pack the sled, and I get this idea in my head, and then that's how it comes to life. I have to keep that idea in what I am actually going to be creating. So now here on the opposite side of the foyer, across from what you just saw, I have the main elf right here, and he has his little glasses on and his list. I'm continuing with that idea of the lists. Remember, they're all over the place. They couldn't be just one list. There's many lists. And here he's checking the list, and it's upside down because he's reading it. So, I try to even give little details like that would absolutely make sense if it was a reality. So you can see I have a lot of candy and whatnot going on, and right below there's the bag. So down here you'll see another list which has Mariette and my name, and our nephews and their girlfriends and my sister-in-laws and whatnot on that list. That's right there, and it's sitting on top of the bag. So what I did was I took a red sheet and I just stuffed it with a couple of boxes and some other stuff to make it puffy like that, and I gathered it up on the top and I tied it out with some garland and a bell and a little swig of something, shiny to make the bag. Now I didn't make it really big because I didn't want it to be encumbering in the foyer. You can't, I didn't want it out there that anybody was going to trip on it. So if you noticed, I also have a bunch of boxes all wrapped up. So I did that too. I've been collecting boxes and, smaller sizes, and I have them around each side of the bag as well as under the tree. Just, something again to carry out that red and white theme that's predominant in this room. We also have this mailbox that we got a while back in the Christmas tree shops, and I thought it would be good to incorporate here as well. I don't have any letters coming out of it yet. That was my intent, to have letters spilling out. Just didn't get to it. All right, so here we are on the opposite side of the newel post, as you can see, entering into the music room over there. I have all the lights off. And again, the giant candy canes, the big ice cream cones, the peppermints, and there's another list right there. I don't forget about keeping with my theme. At the turn of the stairs, I have this great mouse we got in Home Depot, and he has a plate of cookies in his hand. So once again, he's a mouse, but he carries out the theme with the sweets. And you can see right above him, I have another list. Now up there, I did a straight run on the garland so as not to interfere with the loops of the regular stairway. And there's not one part of the stairway that I forget about. This is up on the top, and again, I added a list. I have the candy. I make that just as full as everywhere else. I want to make sure that everywhere you look, the idea is there, that it doesn't lapse in thought. All right, this is where my little fireplace was last year, but since it got destroyed, I couldn't use it. And on the spur of the moment, I remembered I had this little table right here, so I decided to just make it like where Santa's gloves are, where his hot chocolate is, where his cookies are, his hat is hanging there, and it's ready to go. And it also functions that I can use it as display. All right, so you see Santa's gloves on the table there, and they're over a book, and it gives that whole idea of that Santa stopped by. He's going to have his hot chocolate, which I made with spackling and a little bit of more brown paint and more spackling on the top. And there's our beautiful nutcracker, Mackenzie Child nutcracker, which our dear Lucy sent us in the mail. Thank you, Lucy, so much. She's beautiful. And behind it, I have a lamp with a light bulb from Home Depot that kind of makes like a borealis effect on this wall. Up above, I'm carrying the theme of the elves there. Well, look at all the candy. They're surrounded by candy. It's one of their major food groups, eating candy. And there's a Mama Elf right there, and she's loaded down with candy as well. Now, what I did was I made an extended garland which hangs down on the side, leading down to another little projector down there. Those are those cookies. They're polyurethane. Those cookies are about 5, 6, 7 years old, and they hold up. They're polyurethane and Mod Podge and glitter. And look at that little elf holding that spotlight, which shines onto the opposite wall. Now, I also did these little framed pieces on the wall. Again, everywhere you look, I want it to look like Christmas. Okay, we're looking from the opposite side of the foyer over towards the door, and all of that work that I did over there with the reindeer and the lists and the train going across the window and so on. So that's often missed by a lot of people when they first come in, because they don't look behind them, they look in front of them. Here's another little accent piece right here. And going up the steps, of course, we have our Santa's drum corps, which we love them. They're, we've had them a while, and they're like a staple in our Christmas decor. Once again, the mouse at the top, and then the nutcrackers that I made out of window shutters. The projection of all the dots on the walls and the ceilings. I have 2 projectors, one at the top of the steps and one at the bottom of the steps. And there you go. Thanks so much for stopping by. I'm going to be having another video coming up really soon. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment, and you know I love hearing from you. Take care, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye-bye.